Okay, so we're recording now. Wait a minute. Yeah, this is good.
Okay.
If it peaks, I can just turn it down or whatever. So, welcome back to Have a Good Time. Currently, my guest is Don Willis, and also joining us is my dog Benny, my fiance Mary Mugford, which you're probably hearing some shuffling around, and Becka Zimmerman, formerly Rosinski. Is that how you pronounce her?
No, I think you got it right.
Okay. Rebecca's in the bathroom right now, and Mary's helping the dog lay down because he's chirping because he was he's jumping in the lake earlier, and now he's like shivering. So we fear it's a minor slight case of hypothermia.
And I feel a certain level of responsibility, which is why I gave him my jacket.
Yeah. Yeah. So Don gave the dog his jacket.
Which means we're going steady now.
It's similar to that old story of when the prince lays his coat down over the puddle so the woman can walk across it.
Oh, yeah.
You know this one? It's like an old tale of chivalry.
Yeah, I think it was a joke. It was George Gordon, Lord Byron, who threw down his coat for Victoria, I think, or something. He was walking with her and he threw down his coat the nobility was so important that they couldn't tread on water.
Hey, all
with
those
their feet
doors
wet.
are open. Should they be open?
But he was just fucking around. That joke is that old chivalrous thing is based on a joke.
Okay.
That's how it became a joke.
I see.
Maybe. I don't know.
I got you. So, what are your maybe we've dug into that a little bit here, but
This one's not gonna work.
Tell me your feelings about that trick you made with your glasses, or the whole podcast.
I'm a little too aware. I think I'm a little too aware.
You're not aware enough.
That's part of it too.
I have this feeling that my voice is being recorded way louder than your voice, so either you need to speak up or the mic is on the wrong side.
I'll just move closer.
Which I'm pretty sure. Oh, that's cool.
Well, that probably do it. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay. How about now? Is it? Keep looking at. Does it look good?
Yep, it's a little bit closer. Speak up some if you feel
well,
like it.
I'm concerned about using a radio voice or pretending. Trying too hard.
I got you.
I already am trying a little too hard.
That's fine.
But I guess that's how I've conducted my life so far. So why stop now?
Tell me how you feel about chivalry.
Chivalry?
Yeah, you already maybe some.
I think that joke, the whole premise of that classically chivalrous behavior being starting off as a joke is an appropriate way to think about it.
Okay.
Because it's very demeaning what we understand as chivalry.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's very protective. It's sort of paternalistic instead of just letting somebody deal with their own problems and asking for help if they need it. I guess.
Let's to use a phrase I sort of hate but is kind of useful. Let's get into the weeds a little bit with that. So you equate. What was the term you used? Something with paternalistic.
Yeah.
You said you should start off the joke because it's kind of like that. It's kind of like, no, you didn't say condescending. You said.
Yeah, but that's a perfectly acceptable word.
Okay. Condescending, paternalistic. Why are those two unnecessarily equal? I'm not saying they're not. I just what's your...
Well, when you're dealing with another adult human being
Right.
who has will and strength enough to accomplish their goals, to step in and take care of a problem is, what you do for a child.
Right.
And it harkens back to that, treating a woman like a child.
Can we get like maybe an example?
This
of
is
that?
Becka Zimmerman, by the way.
Becka Rosinski.
Rosinski.
/ Zimmerman.
Okay. Rosinski Zimmerman.
Sure.
Okay.
So I'm just thinking like to illustrate what you're talking about. Like, what would be an example? Like holding a door
Sure.
would be like something where it's like,
Yeah, we went to the hyperbole of throwing down your coat over a puddle.
okay, I missed that. I'm
so
sorry.
that your feet should never have to get wet. But yeah, holding a door, pulling out a chair, things that you're perfectly physically capable of doing.
What if chivalrousness
Chivalrous.
I think you're talking
went
horse
both
riding.
ways? Like, what if a woman held out a chair for a man? Why is that socially inappropriate? Like, why shouldn't it just be like we're all helping each other to make things easier for each other?
Is that socially inappropriate?
Sometimes. Men don't like it when I hold the door for them, and I do it often, actually. Because, like, if we're in that order and I hit the door first and somebody's right behind me, I don't care who they are. I think it's nice to hold the door for a person.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah.
You know,
I think.
actually-
But some men are like, oh.
Every other time, I hold the door open, and then sometimes I hold the door open and I elbow the person in the face. Just to mix it up a little bit. I think that's...
Anyway, I feel like I'm getting it off subject. I just wanted to kind of like put it into context for
that's
myself,
good.
so I understood.
That's good. So, do you think that it's a negative thing to be polite in general? Probably not, because you hold the door open for men. Do you hold the door open for women?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Equal
How do-
door holding.
How do women respond to that when you hold the door open for them?
Well, we live in Marquette, so like mostly everybody's okay with anything. But I feel like men sometimes feel a little like
In Marquette
like,
or in
well,
other places?
this is where most of my experience is. So we are in like a bubble here. But like men, if I hold the door for them, feel like I'm being inappropriate a little bit. Like they'll give me this like shifty, like I should be getting the door for you.
Sure. You've
kind of
taken one of their responsibilities, and that just implies that they've been shirking a responsibility they should have quickly assumed before you could have even attempted it. Like you've shot a hole in the boat that is their sense of what it is to be a man.
Oh, so should I not do that? I think that I should continue to like hold the door for, or just don't hold doors anymore. Like there's an option.
That's where I've gone.
Yeah, that's where you're at.
That's where I live.
I'm curious.
It's
I'm
like
curious.
hold all of the doors or none of the doors, but you can't like men or women choose. I don't know, what are you gonna say?
Well, I'm curious as to how women respond when another woman holds the door open for them.
Oh.
How do you feel in it?
Oh,
Yeah,
I guess
when
you guys
you- when
don't.
you- when you do
don't
that-
experience that. Women appreciate it.
Okay.
We're helping each other out. I think.
Yeah,
I
interesting.
don't know. I hope so.
When I hold the door open for a man, usually I feel the same way. He
Like,
goes, "Oh,
hey,
thanks."
Yeah, dude, thanks. Yeah.
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 Most of the time. When I hold the door open for a woman, I get a mixed response. Similar experiences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's an interesting dynamic. So, Don, there is actually an interesting phenomenon that there's like a specific amount of space that within which you can hold the door open for someone and it's appropriate. Let's take gender out of the picture. Let's assume that everyone is an individual and their gender doesn't count. Okay.
That's what I try. That's what I aim. That's what I'm shooting for.
Madness.
Let's assume.
That's
yeah.
wild.
Let's
Communist.
assume that everyone is genderless and you're
Neuter.
they're neuter.
So we have
and
do they have neither or both?
well, we look like those
David Bowie?
mannequins.
So David Bowie.
Yeah, like David Bowie or Marilyn Manson.
Okay, sure.
On the cover of that one album where he has sort of a
So it's a
mangina sort of-
reduction of
Yes, yeah.
genitals. Gotcha.
We're just all genderless.
I'm hiding.
Blanks
I'm hiding
walking
in
around.
I'm hiding in a cave at this point. I don't care about doors.
Oh, okay. Yeah. we're swimming around in a cave. There happens to be this one rock that somehow developed a hinge. Okay,
perpetually falls in front of the space when he does it.
Right. So you're opening the door for we're all individuals.
The
Okay?
sexless monster.
Okay.
We're all these sexless individual
I'm following
monsters.
you here
Right,
because I have
gotcha.
some ideas now. Yeah, sure.
So you open a door for somebody, and you have a particular amount of space.
Ironically, there's a window in which you can open the door.
Yes, right. Yeah, that's true. A space window, which is
A temporal window.
yeah, a space window, which you could also describe as like a what do they call this in space? A wormhole. So we're talking we're talking wormholes.
We're back to the ass smoothie.
We're talking.
Okay.
We're talking windows. We're talking doors.
I have-
So you open a door for somebody,
Yes.
right? And let's say they are 10 feet behind you when you open the door.
Oh,
Genderless person. Let's say Marilyn Manson as a schman. Mary's laughing over there. A schman.
Schwemmen.
So
Michelle Schwemmen.
Was it
Sorry,
Michelle?
So Marilyn Manson is 10 paces behind you.
Sure.
Okay?
Is he carrying a hat box or not?
Is
Shui carrying a hat box or not?
hat box, yes.
Okay.
Marilyn
Him,
Manson,
no.
the human.
Not necessarily.
Because there's something
But
I'd like
maybe-
to address, and I know
Wait,
that
so are we
I know
talking? Okay.
I'm jumping in front of the bus that you're driving.
Okay.
But what I would like to address is there are practical reasons to open a door.
I
for
was
someone.
gonna bring that up as well, because when we
Like,
got to that rock cave
guess
door, I was
maybe-
like, that's heavy, and I can't just push that alone.
Maybe we started with a situation where doors simply were too heavy for women to open.
Okay.
You know, and men could do it back in the like the Neolithic era when doors were made of stone. But if someone's carrying something, if someone is somehow encumbered and they're approaching a door, I'll always open the door for them. I'll run from my truck. I'll stop doing what I'm doing. I'll stop in the street. Car
Yeah.
accident, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
People, there's like children dying on fire in the street, but there's somebody, man, woman, child, is carrying something toward a door. I will sprint. I am.
Yeah.
That's what my mother taught me. My mother,
right.
limited feminism that she had, taught me to open the door for someone who needs help with the damn door.
Okay.
And like, who doesn't need help with the door once in a while? But
As far as convenience goes, it's like somebody signaling me through an intersection. It's like, what the fuck? Just follow the goddamn laws. Just use your own, open your own goddamn door. Let me open my door. Unless I'm carrying something, unless I have a medical emergency, then signal me through the intersection. Yes, I'll go to the hospital first.
Yeah.
I want practicality to govern our interactions.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. So, there is a space where it's like, if I'm going through a door and I assume the person behind me is totally fine with, also opening the door. There's this weird part, especially if it's like a self-closing door, right? Okay, I won't slam the door on somebody who's behind me, assuming that like I don't want to offend you because you're blah blah blah. But so I'm not gonna slam a door. But if there's a self-closing door
There's
and
a
I
certain-
walk through a door, there's like this really.
You're creating a momentum that's going to run into them. It's going to make it even
Right.
harder for them to open the door.
Yeah. So you're kind of
like,
you're not just
this
respecting
this thing.
their ownership of themselves. You know, there's like
You're,
this
just
sort of
you're empathizing because it was fairly easy for you to open the door because there
Right.
wasn't this energy coming in.
yeah, that's true. It's a question of physics.
Yeah.
So I think like all of this together means like each circumstance is different, and that's why like the door situation is always awkward.
It's genderless.
Because you are like picking miscellaneous, like what their facial expression is, who they are, do they need help with the door? Like, if you can do that genderlessly, then that I think is the genderless chivalry that we're talking about.
Yeah.
That refers to horses. That's
Well,
what I know.
then if it's not if gender is not a question, is it chivalry? Or
there we go.
Or is it just politeness?
That's an
Does
excellent question.
chivalry imply
Gender.
sex?
Yeah.
I think chivalry, again, has to do with horses.
Chivalry. Yeah, right. Yeah. I get that. Horses, husbandry, in the same way that husbandry has to do with horses. You know what I mean? Maybe that's actually where it comes from. We don't know. We could easily find out by asking
one of our
Siri.
I don't. Yeah.
by employing our infinite access to information.
Yeah. Somebody look it
We'll
up on the
continue
spot.
on. I'll
So-
go to page 3.
Renders-
So there is this. Okay, let's say there's another word for what we're talking about that's not
Human
not
decency,
politeness so broadly. Yeah. Okay. Human decency. Okay. Human decency. Okay. So yeah, opening the door for somebody. They're walking behind you. Sometimes it's rude to hold the door open, not because of anything having to do with gender or gender roles, but because if you hold the door open, the other person now has a sort of soft obligation, you could say, to not make you wait for so long that holding the door open an inconvenience to you.
Well, they have to show a certain amount of gratitude as well.
Yeah.
Right. So
They have to hurry and they have to be gracious.
if they're 20 paces behind you rather than 5.5, then they have, in order for you to, from their perspective, they need to, exemplify gratitude to you for holding the door open. Otherwise, they're the asshole in a way. You know. So if you hold the door open for someone who's 15 paces behind you, they have to sort of rush up to the door in order to, same thing with like crossing the street or something. So a car comes to a stop. You're maybe 2 steps into the street. You have to wait for like there's sort of a gray area. It's a muddled edge,
Yeah, because we think of ourselves as a society governed by laws, by something we almost equate with natural laws.
Right.
The physics of navigating a urban environment.
A shared
you have a contract with this
social
person.
social contract, right?
Right, and so
loosely.
sometimes when someone extends that grace to you, and they're like, "Go ahead."
Yeah.
You're like, I have been trained for the last 10,000 years to fear this situation,
Right.
and you're saying just go ahead. You're saying just have a nice time walking in front of this 4,000-pound piece of steel.
Right. Okay.
Like, I don't know. And is somebody else gonna honor the contract? Like, I'm gonna try to do this by the rules that we all know.
Yeah.
And so I think that passing through a doorway, it has this wonderful metaphorical significance. That talk to Alex McCracken about liminal spaces and like what it means to pass through a doorway for our like whatever psychological mind, like going to an elevator, passing through a doorway. Like, these are important things. You're going from outside to inside. This experience is important. So if you have someone to foster that experience, someone to help you through that experience, it can be very nice. It can be the doula of your birth into this room. If someone holds a door for you in a dead river, then all the uncomfortable weirdos in there suddenly feel like, oh, here comes a person that is allowed in here. But at the same time, you're sort of burdened with this responsibility of being midwifed into a place.
Right. I think it reveals the reciprocal nature of ethics. Right. Ethics is a commonly it's a social experience.
You can't be gratuitous with it. You can't just give ethics to someone.
You can't be ethical on an island by yourself, right? On the proverbial desert island. Ethics is something that you practice. It's sort of a ritual, almost religious practice with other people. It's like we are observing these sort of these doctrines in place, and then we pay our sort of penance or we pay our reverence to these ideals,
Right.
And these little gray areas are
Right.
where they kind of expose themselves as like, this is a social thing. It's not something that's just internal to the individual. It's something that's shared and mixed and experienced amongst the
And they become
society.
they become standardized. You know, and then we all know what the contract is, what we're dealing with. And so for a long time, men would open doors for women because doors are heavy, girls need help, whatever. And now we're living in this time when that's ending. It ended slower than a lot of other things.
Can I introduce just like the definition and the etymology of chivalry?
Yeah, please.
Because I think this is important because you guys are defining it actually. And taking sex or gender out of it is actually very practical to the original kind of code thing happening. So chivalry, 1300, body or host of knights, knighthood in the feudal society system, bravery in war, warfare as an art, knighthood, nobility. Okay, so let's get to this part. The nobility as one of the estates of the realm, also as the word for an ethical code emphasizing honor, valor, generosity, and courtly manners. So it's like a code. And that's exactly what you guys have been saying.
Well, it comes from the same word as cavalry.
Yeah.
Horse people.
Yeah. It makes sense that
because you're rich, you're educated, and you're dealing with a society that isn't rich. So
why in our society does it seem so gender specific when really originally it was just like,
but that's
be honorable and treat others well.
But that was gender specific because only men were knights, and they would treat ladies with reverence and kindness, despite the fact that most people would just club them and rape them or whatever. And it was a mark. It was a mark of honor and ethical behavior to not treat women badly. And that's
to not be horrific.
To not be a horrific,
in general,
violent, vicious animal.
That also included,
Right.
Not clubbing the woman and dragging her into the cave or whatever.
Exactly.
Right?
And it came up with like Christianity, like to behave, which is what the one good thing Christianity did for Western culture. Well, one of several things, I guess.
I would say
don't look at me that way.
Oh no, I was just looking up and inward into my own brain.
But the knights who were the chivalrous ones were taught these principles to be generous and kind and courteous.
Right.
And it's a great place to come from. And chivalry, as a general rule, though it can be demeaning to the people who are who are getting chivalrized,
being shivved.
Being shivved. It can be extremely demeaning, but it's like.
So it's got shivved at the dollar store the other day. This guy held the door for me way too long. Got shivved.
Yeah, he saw me coming out. He saw me leaving the exit on the highway and then held the door until I showed up.
Do I look weak? No. Sorry.
Yeah, good. I like the horse theme going on there. Horse stuff.
Yeah. So
horse stuff.
Well, back in the old days, the horse would actually hold the door.
Yeah, that's where it came from.
Right. That's what the bridle was designed for. That's why it has the rings on the outside.
Yeah.
Just to get a hold of a door handle.
All right. Horse stuff. I grew up next to a horse barn. Were the people there chivalrous? Or? I guess they were chivalrous.
Would they hold a stall for you if you were at a public restroom?
Stall open. Yeah, but that was like actually before I ever had any encounters. So like my family lived out in the lived in a burb basically. Lived in the burbs, and then we moved out of the country when I was like 8 or something. And our neighbors down the hill were horses.
Why did they? Did they keep like livestock in the yard, like horses, like a Ren and Stimpy?
Horses were there.
It was like they lived in this little house across the horses. Yeah, the horses lived in the house. The people lived in the horse barn, the house barn.
Yeah, like they're like the Hoonan from Gulliver's Travels, the Hoonan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ooh,
the Yahoos.
Yahoos.
I think that's where the word Yahoo comes from. I'm just...
Yahoos were the humans. The Hoonan were the horses.
Okay, right.
They were
yeah.
So basically we're discussing a medieval novel or idea of what it was to treat others properly in a society that was a bit of a mess.
I don't think that's true. I think that taking the original meaning of a word and
Right,
using
and
it like it still means that. It
we're
doesn't.
we're like
We use words.
we're
that
whittling
don't-
away
they-
to figure out what it means now.
The word doesn't mean anything like what it used to mean. Chivalry now is not
The
like
same thing.
knights
It's
in
like
armor. It's
we're in two different worlds.
We could be using a word that was a schmig.
What do you think it means now?
Schmigagan.
Yeah. So what does it mean now?
What it means now, it's just this. It's the like. I don't know.
I feel like it's the expectation of men to
Do nice
things,
right.
and then which
Like
means-
contractual nice things, not just like random nice things. This is expected.
expected,
Yeah.
and there is not that expectation for females
So it's like
that I know of.
No.
yeah. Where's the bare minimum for women too? Then like I think that's an interesting thing.
It's to be
So we
grateful.
don't always
Well,
treat
that's-
men nicely.
for that.
To be grateful, interesting. Yeah.
Ah.
Why
To
isn't there a
appreciate-
code of
To
conduct
be
for...
a non-ingrate.
Right.
You know, the word ingrate sort of defines in itself, I mean, like a whole code of ethics, you know what I'm saying? So like, you're an ingrate. It already has a good guy and a bad guy,
That's the
and a whole world of ethics built into just
the
that
default
world, you know? It's like,
is you're being bad.
right.
But thank you for being not bad.
Yeah, don't be an ingrate, or thanks for not being an ingrate, or
Right.
something, you know? Yeah.
I guess my skin crawls a little bit when I hear the phrase, "What is chivalry dead?" You know, can you believe this? Is It's like, well,
Well, is
Well,
gratitude dead? You know? It's like,
well,
you know,
yeah, it's not.
Well, I think it's because people who say things like that are clinging to. Did you see this sketch on Saturday Night Live where the girl's in the bar she's working on the campaign for Hillary Clinton, and the guys keep coming up to her and being like, "Yeah, I was working on the campaign and polling all these people and like just really being a good Democrat." And
So yeah, that's what
she kinda-
liberalism is, I think.
she kind of rebuffs the guy. And he's like, "Oh man, I did all this stuff to get laid. It didn't work. God."
She says that?
The guy.
Oh, the
does.
guy, yeah, right,
Like,
right.
and that's the
Yeah.
sense of the guy who's like, chivalry's dead. Is like, this didn't work.
I
This,
didn't get
this,
what I wanted from
this ploy that I was trying to use to impress you, and I think that's what people are afraid of.
I actually hear it more from females,
Yes,
than
I would
anything
agree.
else.
Oh,
And I'm often like,
which is like it kind of feels like when I hear that, what I hear is I have all these expectations that aren't being met.
Right, I want
by
stuff
all
for free.
men. Well, maybe.
Well, it's like
Actually.
I'm not the person to point this out, but I'll repeat it because I think it's relevant to the conversation. Like the free resources are to women what free sex is to men. You know, it's like a sort of a drug that corresponds with our biological pre-settings. You know, our biological predisposition. It's like resources and free sex. You know, it's like that. That's yeah,
but women like free sex too.
Okay, but women give sex. Women are asked, and then they say yes or no, right?
Not always, right?
But like 99.5%.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go with like statistically.
Yeah, sure, there are exceptions. I'm sure.
I know. I'm
There are
like.
probably some asexual guys who just are, you know, I don't know, maybe somebody kicked them in the balls too many times and they're just like not interested or whatever. Okay, but yeah, it's okay. So
Or
there are
some
exceptions.
Some
there are
women
good-
are like, I enjoy sex and I want to have sex with you, and like, are you up for that?
But
Like-
yeah, you don't have to worry about being rejected. You don't have to ask for the most part. It's just you can do that.
You can just accept many different advances. I'm not saying you in particular. I'm just saying in general. You know, women are approached with.
You're saying in general, women have more control.
Yes.
You're arbiters.
They have the upper hand
Yeah.
on
Right.
giving and receiving.
Because there are a lot of
Okay.
biological reasons. You have to worry about pregnancy and all these other things.
Yeah, there's a much higher cost
Right.
to pregnancy for a woman than there is for a man, right? Okay, so
Yeah.
so it makes sense that women have sort of control over the yes or no, and that men have to approach that in order to get it, right? So,
Okay.
so if those are reversed, to sort of like extend that principle, you could say that like because the cost of pregnancy is way higher, then resources have a way higher value for women than they do for men. So a guy can have a bunch of resources, but if he makes 13 girls pregnant and then he runs off, those resources, once you have sort of enough resources, you could say, like, I'm comfortable, I don't need very much. If you have your needs taken care of, you could say, like, I really don't need that much to be happy and to be, feel like I'm doing great in the world or whatever. But if you're pregnant and you have this impending huge responsibility that's going to require a lot of resources, and you're going to be sort of like like geographically incapacitated in a sense, like you have to stay with your baby and like bond with it, and you can't go out and get resources and leave the baby alone for X amount of hours to get your stuff. Then like resources have themselves a way higher value in themselves. You know what I'm saying? It's like, this is something that that has to be brought to me. So there's this kind of there's sort of like I think that's why those particular like parts of gender roles exist, at least biologically. Hopefully, I don't know whether maybe we can move beyond that, and that would be a good thing. Well,
that's what the introduction of legal abortion helped to do, was to return some of that power to women, and that's how
right.
I think that this country has become a little more equal, men and women, because you don't have to be bound by the 20-year obligation that pregnancy implies.
It's true, and you don't have to get pregnant.
Right. The sexual revolution was predicated
if you have access to healthcare,
drug use,
yeah.
and an understanding of our mortality.
Right. Men do pay more taxes than women on average in general. So it kind of is it's the same thing, just extrapolated.
Do they
to
pay more taxes because they get a higher wage and more are taken out of their wages?
Good question.
Well, that's a big question, but the wage gap is dependent on women's choices, particularly to get pregnant. So overall, men make more on the dollar, more for their time than women do. But that's because if you sort of break all those elements down, women work less because a lot of different reasons, but because they choose to have kids. And so, it's sort of the same principle applies in that.
I mean, that's a theory. That's not
I kind
proven
of
that
disagree
that's
with
why
it a little
women
bit.
get paid less.
Okay, what's the...
I don't. Well, maybe that happens, but I don't think that is correct. Like, I don't know. I don't have a really good rebuttal, but I just want to say I kind of disagree, and I want to think for a
We're
second.
staring down the barrel of a research problem.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Like,
Right.
it sounds like you've looked into this.
yes, I have some, and I could refer you guys to that.
It
So.
sounds
if you want.
like you're just disagreeing from an emotional standpoint. I'm not saying that you're wrong.
Even that that's bad.
Or even that that's bad. I'm just saying that we don't know the answer to this question. So we
Yeah.
can't...
In the context
And
of this
that I just
conversation,
only
right.
wanted to disagree a little bit to be like, hang on, is that
It's an excellent question.
Yeah.
Not something that we can just
we can't just hash that out
easily
right now.
pick apart with Siri's help right now.
It's Siri.
Siri.
And I feel like she's...
how does the wage
I feel like
gap
she's going to be
work?
biased because she's a girl.
Wait, let's ask
I don't know.
her.
John just changed his to an Australian man.
Yeah.
Mine's an Australian woman and she sounds more like a robot than...
Siri, how does the wage gap work?
There's something about the Australian accent.
Checking.
That
Okay,
that
I
sounds
found
more
this on the web
robotic.
for how does the wage
think
gap
so.
work.
So it's like there's kind of an inevitable upspeak in
There's a
it.
lot. That's a big
Yeah, oh yes,
subject.
it's questioning.
Wait, can we go back?
how-
to
yeah,
this? Let
'cause
me
we
ask
got,
a
like-
question real quick. So you're saying that you've researched and women are paid less because they choose to have babies and they're out of the workplace more?
There's a lot of different factors involved in it. One is so they go out of the workforce, so they're not working as many hours because they
Or
are
they're not working
home taking
at
care of
all.
the babies. But women who are in the workplace that do have children,
What about the women who are in the workplace that don't have children?
they are actually I'll look this up and I'll send it to you guys. Maybe we could start a Facebook message for it.
Yeah.
Women in the workplace who don't have children, who do the same amount of work, actually get paid on average a little bit more than men.
On average.
Yeah, I mean, we're
Right,
talking
right,
about
right,
statistics here, so it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
over broad. Actually, women get paid equal pay for equal work. If you break it down, amount of work for similar for the same job positions, like let's say job positions, women actually get paid a little more for their time than men for the same jobs.
I'm curious about like why a woman should make less money if she's pregnant or needs to take time off. Like
Because
that should be
she's-
built in.
Because she's not working.
But shouldn't
to
it
be-
be built in that she gets
to
that
be-
wage?
Egalitarian, to be fair, that actually makes a lot of sense. If you're not working, if you choose to make another human, which is going to drag on our resources.
That's
That's
well,
good. What? Racehorse? What about racehorses?
It's going to drag
Racehorses?
drag
Back to the
It's
horses.
going to consume the resources that we need.
Oh, the racehorses that we need.
You ever done a racehorse burger? It's delicious.
Just
Okay.
crack it open there.
But right, it's not because work is different than having a baby, right? I mean, like
You're doing two different things.
like
yeah,
you
for sure.
you have
Like-
you have like a job requirement here where you need to accomplish these specific tasks in order to make the company function,
yeah.
and then you're having a baby. Like this baby's not going to help the company function for like 20 years minimum.
If they
It's
work
like
on
you're-
it. It's
it's an expectation in the workforce anyway. Your social life should not interfere with
Right,
your,
and it
you know,
shouldn't.
and having a
Right.
baby certainly.
Well, you should be prepared to have a baby.
Right.
Like,
It's an aspect
I
of
would
your
hope.
it's
but
an
like
aspect of your
also-
private life, your social life.
Yeah.
and if you go if you like let's say
That's
you
true.
get a job and you say like I don't want to have any kids, I just want to work, I'm only concerned with my career.
Yeah.
And you're 5 years into that job and you're like, maybe I would like to have a kid, like your employer or the person who hired you, let's say like the hiring manager or whatever, they can't predict that like change, you know
Well,
what I'm saying?
Don like just said,
Hmm.
it's also part of your personal life. So
Yeah.
they
But-
can't really. Can they? Like have a say over what you choose to do?
Absolutely not. But they can
Right.
have a say about how much they pay you for the stuff that you do. And if you're not
That
doing
you do
stuff,
there.
Or
Yeah.
whether they hire you or not.
Well, what if you work
You know
from
what I'm
home while
saying?
you're pregnant? Like that's possible too.
well, that's fine. Yeah.
But, like-
and they'll pay you for that work. I mean, like
So are
according
you-
to the work that you've done.
The value that you're like
But you're
bringing
like,
to that particular company, right?
but you're also thinking about like day by day, hour by hour kind of pay, whereas like the value to a company for a human to stay and work with them, if they're super like valuable to the company, is worth building in a plan for pregnancy.
Well, I think that companies are really good at doing exactly what they have to do, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to have, like, if they have an emotional investment in the person, it's based on their value. And so they're going to compensate them according to the value that they perceive.
Yeah.
And so if they perceive that this pregnant woman or this woman and tiny child are no longer valuable to their company, they're not gonna pay for that.
Or less than maybe, let's say, another woman who is
It's not.
They're
who
busting her
isn't
ass 12 hours
sort
a
of-
day for the company.
right, or in staying late after hours or whatever because they don't have to like go home and take care of their kid. That's fine. That's good. Because you want to take care of kids. It's like that's a positive social.
But there should be
But to
another.
the company,
There should be
Right,
another
right.
mechanism in place that fosters the importance of that on like a socialist national scale. Our government should take care of pregnant women, not these corporations that.
Well, they do through laws that say that you can't discriminate based on gender and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's like a big social debate that's been going on since I guess probably since the 60s and probably before that, but so I mean there is that expression of social what would you call it, like reinforcement through the laws and stuff like that to ensure that those people are getting taken care of in that sense, and yet this is sort of my point going into it, the sort of like biological aspect of that, or the biological expression, still plays itself out in spite of the regulations that are supposed to ensure this sort of like ensure that egalitarianism. But the egalitarianism does exist, but it plays it's more accurately expressed in the biological pressures that express themselves in just the, like, I guess what we would think of as traditional gender roles. Does that make sense to anybody? Am I talking crazy here? Like, I think
Both.
that what?
Both?
maybe a little
Both.
bit.
Okay.
A little both. I guess I'm still. I don't know. I gotta think for a second.
Would you say that laws that protect women's employment despite the fact that they want to have children, thereby compromising their effectiveness for the company, would you say those laws are chivalrous?
I don't think it compromises their effectiveness.
What reduces their effectiveness?
I don't think
in
they are
that
chivalrous.
finite situation.
Because hopefully most of their mind and their will is devoted to the protection and education and fostering and love of a child.
All right. Well,
Do
as well
you
as
think
for
that
the
they could-
father, hopefully.
But to a lesser extent. I mean, like, you just don't connect as hard. Okay.
It's not the same.
They
Is
weren't
it
they
the
weren't
same?
part they didn't share a body for a while. You know what I'm saying? And that's actually
I mean, that's like 9 months out of 90 years, though.
Creates a different, there's a different
There's
biological
a different bond.
connection.
You're right. You're right.
9 months out of maybe like 40 years, right? But it's different, and actually
Oh, right, because the amount you share, the time you share with your parents is less than your lifespan.
yeah, one of the two greatest predictors of the development of empathy in people is free play in nature. Kind of makes sense.
Yep.
You're out there playing with other kids. You're
You see
outdoors,
stuff happen, you like
Yep.
know it. Yeah, yeah. that makes
and the
sense.
presence of a father in your environment when you grow up.
Because you're relating to something not
Something that you're sort of part of, that
out
you
of
can sort of
context,
relate
but you're
with,
part of. Yeah.
but that's definitely separate from you. Like a person's relationship with their mother is kind of like more like, oh yeah, we were kind of like the same thing sort of for like a period of time, you know? So I mean, at least that's my sort of like take on why that's one of the two major predictors of empathy, is that you can see this other person maybe that looks like you, that you share some characteristics with, and maybe you even sort of look like, but they're separate from you because you weren't like essentially like a part of them. You didn't live inside their womb for a while, you know.
Yeah.
So
You just lived in their balls for a couple of seconds.
yeah, you just live in their balls for a couple of seconds. Right. And only like sort of.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Nobody else. Oh my god.
Alright, I'm out.
Alright, Don's out. He's gonna drop his mic.
Mic drop.
Are you really out of here?
I have to go pee and I want a cigarette real bad.
Right on.
I might come back.
Hey.
I'd like to come back.
Okay, so we're picking back up here. Moments after we paused it there, so.
I feel like I learned a lot about chivalry.
Yeah.
A, how to say it, because I was having trouble there for a little while.
The number one.
Super embarrassing. But B, like, I didn't realize it was like an ancient, like, not ancient, 1300s.
Yeah.
So it's like a very old code
Medieval.
that we're trying to translate into modern society, and it's not translating. And so people are like conflicted about this whole thing. We've gotten all the way from like chivalry to unequal pay to like this idea, and I think I'm hearing it wrong, but that maybe women shouldn't make as much because they might get pregnant. And then like, wait, that's not what's being
That's
said
not-
at
No,
all,
no,
at all, at all.
No, no,
Way
no.
off.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, let's like.
Should or shouldn't doesn't factor into it. What I'm saying is, or what I guess what I've been, I think at least what I'm trying to express is that the biological imperative, I guess you could call it, the biological force or pressure, evolutionary pressure, is much stronger, at least so far, than any government control or regulation can impose upon a culture or a society that
Yes.
says this is the way
Yeah.
it should be. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So like that force is way older and it's way more adapt. Like the biological force to be like, the biological force of reproduction is a much stronger force than here's what you have to do if you're an employer. You know, you're less responsive to the fear of reprisal as a somebody who works for or owns a company or hires people inside a company or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You're much less responsive than people are much less responsive to that category as they are their own internal
Yes.
biological imperative, right?
Well
to
said.
reproduce.
Yes. Yep.
And that plays itself out in, and that force expresses itself in contradiction a lot of times, and in a lot of different kind of cultures. It expresses itself in contradiction to other cultures that develop. It's like a more powerful force. So you have these two forces going up against each other, butting heads in a way. It's like this one says, no matter what, in order to make outcomes for people more equal, we have to impose these laws, and if you don't follow the law, then you get you get reprisals in these ways. I don't know how
Parking
to
tickets.
explain it.
Great example.
Or
Yeah.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
And but the biological thing is much more powerful. So you could totally, think and go into a job and say, I'm never gonna have kids. I don't want to have kids, blah, blah, blah. And then a couple of years later, you feel this like
'Cause you're capable.
urgency to do it, right? So perhaps I'm just using that as an example. So that force is stronger than like you have to hire someone based on their capability and rather than just their life, rather than their capability plus their life decisions. It's a more the
Seems
biological
like-
force is more powerful.
Yeah, it seems so uphill
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
for a woman who like is super like for me. I'm like all about projects and job and career and I never am gonna have a kid. So like, I have this perspective that I've never wanted a child, and like, and yet I'm facing a world where like these concepts are available.
Well, but then in that case, the biological imperative doesn't apply to you, right? So you
statistically, it does to a lot of people, and so like I don't fall into the category, and I think that's where like my confusion lies. Is like.
Okay. Do you feel like in your work you're paid less than a man who would be doing your job?
No, and that's another way I don't fit into this statistic.
Do you know a lot of people who live like that?
Where they make less than a man?
Where they are in an environment with like in a situation where they're working a job, they're getting. I mean, I know this anecdotal kind of information isn't great as a predictor or as a societal litmus test.
No, but I'm trying to go through my files.
I mean, that's as bullshit as like, oh, my cousin had cancer, man. This is bullshit because I had this one experience, but like you know what I mean, like, do you as a woman who doesn't plan to have children experience this marginalization that you refer to, that you're talking about, that you fear?
No, I don't personally. I don't personally face any of those challenges.
Well, that's cool.
That's awesome, right?
Cool.
Super
that's
cool.
Awesome. That's a big. That's a big. You know, if you like, if from the position of like, women are treated unfairly, and this is something that we need to overcome, then you are, as a person with all these, you know, other challenges, that's a big step forward, a big success for being a woman in an unfair world, right?
Yeah, but I like work with like people who are like my family, and like I choose environments that are healthy for me, and I've been in environments where I've been a woman who has been like not respected, and I choose.
And you move on from there.
Right, because I logically am like, no, I'm not going to put up with that. I'm going to move to this place where I'm treated well.
Awesome.
Which is good, yeah. So I feel like I'm an outlier.
Well, we're living in the future. You know, it's like we're living on this bright new planet of, you know.
Right, it's all Volkswagen. It's all the new Volkswagen Bug.
Right, and the Volkswagen the bus. Mm-hmm. Wait, I think that's coming out.
Yeah, the new ones.
I feel like this is just a challenging concept for me because I'm so, like, I want equal pay and blah blah blah.
Right, it's nice to have a rallying cry and be like, this is not fair. Like, pay off everybody's student loans, which is not necessarily the right thing to do, and you know, do all this really good stuff, and it's not all necessarily good stuff. Like, we align ourselves. I'm a liberal person. I think that we should do everything to reduce suffering, and you know, increase the standard of living for every human being who is alive and may or may not come to be alive in the future. But you know, like, some of this stuff that we rally behind, we have to look at critically. We have to look at everything critically, and see and test the truth of it, and to see whether or not it's just somebody trying to manipulate you for their own reason. Yeah. Which sounds like a conspiracy theorist talking, but
everybody's got an angle. Like, that's true. Everybody's got an angle.
Right, but so you have to, like, you know, I accept these things. Let women get less pay for the same amount of work. I've always accepted that. And John presents this seemingly researched hypothesis that has the ring of truth. And so now I have to ask myself,
what's John's angle?
What's John's angle? What does he want Mary
that
to
came
do?
along with a wink.
Well, and also, like, I've talked with Evan, who has been on this podcast before, and like,
he's trying to subjugate you, obviously.
He also has broken it down into like all of the research he's done, and been like, really, it's actually kind of equal based on this, and this, and of course I can't remember what the thises are.
Right. Well, you have to ask yourself what you want out of the situation, like to test your own what's the word? Objectivity as a scientist, I guess.
Hmm.
When you're looking for information, like, are you just trying to support your own argument, or are you like
looking for emphatic
honestly,
data.
are you just trying to
Sure.
to invalidate something that sounds wrong?
Sure.
Because you could do that. You could easily do that.
Right.
Well, also, there's a lot of
Also,
social scrutiny that
Right.
you could
Like even the
can
things,
and will
like
receive.
if you were to air this, like the things that I'm saying about this could come off as extremely like bigoted
Right.
and vicious. You know,
Yeah.
like women are stupid.
Or for me as a woman to sit, or Becca, to sit here and have a conversation about equal pay or not equal pay. I could be scrutinized just by women, and maybe men in my life, but definitely women, for even just sitting here having a conversation and listening to an argument against that.
Right. And not just screaming and slamming the door and leaving. And that's where we are. And there are elements of this in our society. That's why the concept even exists.
yeah, it's a good conversation. It's a good subject.
I
I
think it's an
certainly-
essential conversation.
I
think.
certainly
Well said. Yes.
think it's important to say that I fight against it and try to work around it, but I do always have this constant fear in me when I have a conversation that's controversial, because I can, even though maybe I'm not that social, I'm pretty much an introvert, but I could be socially scrutinized and just, for even just sitting and having a conversation that's
Right. The whole like Big Brother, like somebody's listening to me.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna judge me just because I'm participating, and that comes from this incredibly binary social philosophy that we've come to start adopting as a country, as a people, is to say like, you are fucking on our team or you're on the other team.
Yes.
So-
There's no interface. There's no middle ground. There's no
So
research.
does there need to be a shift in, like, clearly society has already redefined chivalry, but like, does there need to be a shift in the moral code even further?
To rationality. I mean,
Let's
to-
go.
Or does there not need to be a code, just be nice?
just superimposing this artificial structure over whatever you're doing is gonna mess it up. Some things aren't gonna fit into this artificial.
Right, case by case.
Yeah.
Well, I think that one thing that I've found useful is, I think it's Don. Maybe you can help me on this. Who developed the or wrote about the is-ought dichotomy? Was it Hume? David Hume,
Sure.
Scottish philosopher. I think that's who I'm thinking of. He says, it's called the is-ought dichotomy. So you have these two sort of like opposing ideas. Okay, is-ought dichotomy, and the idea is that you can't derive an ought. You can't derive an ought, something that ought or ought not happen, from an is, something that is.
Ooh, I like
So
that.
sure. Right? Does that make sense?
Does.
Like, so something that just is, like, I guess I'm thinking about this in terms of like what we were talking about earlier. It's like there is this biological force called the need to reproduce, which every like biological organism has. So you can't say this ought to happen or that ought not happen in the context of something that just is. Like there's this biological force. It happens. It's more powerful than
Do you think
than
that
regulations and social ostracization. Although social ostracization is, I think, another powerful force that sort of runs up against that. Like, go ahead.
Do you think that biological urge to have children is diminished now with as the generations are going and women are kind of becoming more, becoming more focused on careers? There are a lot of women in my life who are like, I don't ever want to have kids. I want to focus on my career. Becca's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Is that diminishing? Do you think the biological force within us to have
Yeah,
children?
I think that's another.
Is there gonna be a point where you can't use that as an argument? I guess. Do you think in the
yes.
future where you can't use there's this biological force within you that's no matter what you want to have kids?
I think there already is. I think there
Yeah.
already is. In Japan, for instance, the rate of reproduction that they need, that people figured out to have a growing, sustained and slightly growing economy over the next, whatever it is, 50 years or something, 100 years, is like, let's just say X amount, okay? And they are, like, Japan is, as a nation state, I guess you could say, is well below that particular average. So they're in this reproductive winter, essentially. And a lot of Western countries are also in that same category. There are like other like societies and cultures and stuff like that are not in that, and that are actually advancing in terms of their like reproductive rate. Okay, and that's like there's this huge sort of explosive thing going on in Europe right now, where all these countries are bringing in people from societies that have this increasing reproductive rate, and that's part of their culture too. It's not just it is. I mean, it's like a religious thing, but it's also a societal thing.
It's a marked distinction to have a lot of children.
Right, and that
it's dishonorable to have
right.
few children or none.
Right, and in Western culture, and let's say like also like currently Japanese culture, and in China there's like the one-child policy that was actually just recently overturned, and now you can have more than one kid. Wow. But there is it's actually honorable to have less children, or it's dishonorable to have a lot of children. And like I grew up in a I grew up in a family with 13 kids. Eventually, that had 13 kids, right? So we experienced this sort of social like it seemed like, I guess a way to put it is like it seemed like people didn't know what to do or how to respond socially to somebody who had a bunch of kids. So it's like I never experienced that directly, but I would see how people interacted with my parents, and it was like they were like I always imagined they were trying to figure out how they should respond to seeing somebody with a whole bunch of kids pile into an elevator, or get all these kids in this one vehicle and drive them somewhere. It's like when my parents interacted with strangers, it was like I could always see the wheels turning in other people's heads. Like, how am I supposed to respond to this? These are people that I'm interacting with right now in the moment, but I feel like I think I should have a different kind of. I don't have a setting for this. You know what I'm saying? It was like I always saw like the wheels turning. It was like people just didn't. So they would say, "Oh, that's a lot of kids," or "Wow, that must be a handful," or some. They would sort of be grasping for some sort of response.
What they were really thinking was something like, "How dare you?"
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. Or maybe it was challenging to their concept. Maybe they thought it. Who knows? Maybe they thought this is really cool.
Right.
But why do I feel like that's awesome? Or you don't know what was actually going on in their head, which is why I was saying it's a guess.
Well, because
but,
you don't come across many families that have 13 kids.
Right.
Yeah.
So of course that would be.
But in other cultures, you might.
Right. And our
it'd
culture.
be my
But our
grandparents.
culture.
100 years ago.
Yeah, sure.
Our culture's like 3, 4, 5 is big.
Well, not
6
but not
is
but not
huge.
100 years ago.
Right. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
even
You
our
had as many as you could. and
grandparents or
somebody
great
died.
grandparents. It's
Hopefully
like
some of
people to help you on the farm, or
Yeah.
whatever, raise the cattle, milk the cows.
So I guess
Something
my
like that.
question, I guess I was wondering if you think it's gonna. What was my my original question.
Was the biological imperative ever going to become a not relevant response to here's this imbalance in the world? And I think yes, there are instances of that where that's actually happening right now. One is Western culture, and one is like, let's say, Far Eastern culture.
But the intrinsic problem with that is that those people die out.
Yes.
And are overcome by breeders.
Right. Yeah.
That's just a
Overcome by what?
Breeders. It's just a math problem.
Yeah.
If you don't have any kids to carry on, like what we talked about before, the genetics of intellect, sort of, to carry on this, the genetics of ideas. Mm-hmm. If you don't have any kids, if you believe that having children is so immoral, irresponsible, or just not fun, then your children won't carry that on because they won't exist. Yeah. And the people who think that breeding is awesome, their children will carry on. And they will carry that idea into the future. Yeah. And so the human race will survive despite all of our lofty Western notions about the fact that it shouldn't.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if the fact that humanity shouldn't exist is a lofty Western notion, but I mean, I understand what you're saying. I just like.
I thought I'd toss it out there to see if you could bite. Good to call it a fact.
Yeah. Well.
Fact.
Okay, so,
check it.
Yeah.
Siri.
Should
Siri.
humanity exist? Should your parents exist, Siri?
Yeah, and that's, honestly, I mean, that's a big question, and still, and people still wrestle with that. I mean, Jess Serble was talking a couple of months ago about that's the big question for I forget the term she used, but it was the literati or something something like that. Should you have a bunch of should you reproduce or not, and
or should you just proselytize other people's kids to carry on your lofty beliefs?
right. Yeah, that's big. It's a question. That method actually requires. I mean, it's way more resource consumptive. It's way easier to have your own kids,
make your own
and
disciples,
train them into your own way of thinking or whatever. Which is, I guess, kind of where, probably where the people in my parents' environment were, because it was very in the culture that I grew up in, which was living alongside right next to academia, and it was very much the people that I went to church with and stuff worked with people in college who were teaching in college.
It's a sleeper cell.
Yeah, it was essentially a sleeper cell.
It's a theocracy sleeper cell.
Right. And I mean, it was not uncommon for me to interact with people from other big families, like 7, 8, 9, 10, 12.
Yeah.
Kids
Catholicism was like that for a really long time.
Right.
That's why they're so against contraception.
Right.
Is that they want to make more Catholics. And that's who was the church with all the blue jean skirts and the big bands?
What do they call it? They have bonnets.
Bonnets,
They're like big vans.
If you're listening right now on the podcast, just type it in the comments.
Got that.
We'll figure it out. What are they called?
We gotta figure. You're gonna have to edit this out. We gotta figure this out. Not that it's some kind of.
Well, there are Mennonites.
Sure.
And there are.
These are, the ones I'm thinking of, though. It's not that.
Yeah, it's people who get baptized in the Holy Spirit.
Right.
And
speaking
tongues. They are. Do you recognize this, Becka? Not Mormon.
They would always come into the grocery store 5 minutes before closing with their 15 kids.
They were
and they'd shop for 45 minutes.
It was charismatic is the broad term for fruits of spiritual baptism or whatever. But then there's also more specifically there is What are they called?
I'm just gonna be over here silent and figure
Okay,
this
okay, yeah. You figure that out. We'll talk.
out. It's something with an E. No.
Not evangelical. It's the we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. So yeah, and there are certain sects of like parts of Western culture that are still sort of holding on to this, like, you know, yeah, have kids, train them up in your own, train up a child in the way he should go is one way you could put it.
Don't bring your mother's gray hair down to Sheol.
Wow.
Wowza.
Wowza. The old tire fire in the edge of Jerusalem.
That's true.
Oh,
How does that
boy.
relate back to chivalry?
Well-
I think we've gone too far.
Yeah,
We dove too
We
deep.
can't see
Well, it's
short
good. I
of it.
appreciate that. Like that. Like I'm trying to bring it back.
Tie it
back
around.
Tie it back.
So,
Well, I think
Wow.
chivalry was a good place to start because it sort of brought up the sort of like. It brought up like, you know, the question of, is it ethics or is it gender specific, or is the gender
Yeah.
specificism sort of something that we've applied to it later
we've
on,
like implanted. Yeah.
you know, and imbued the idea with, you know, or, you know, so I think it was a good starting point. So I guess I'll hit the pause button. If you're listening out there, thanks for listening all this time.
Episcopalians?
No, that's the wrong one. That's the
They're
wrong one.
awesome.
Oh yeah, the Episcopalians are great. Hey, if you're an Episcopalian and you're listening,
We love you.
call into the show. We'll figure out
Call in.
a number. And you
We're
can call
live.
into a Skype number. Yeah, we're live.
If you're from Marquette,
JK.
headed down to St. Paul's. They love everybody.
Okay, thanks for listening. This is your host, John Davey. You're listening to the podcast. Have a good time. And I hope you're having a good time. Thanks for listening. Follow us on Twitter and hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and follow us on SoundCloud.
Can I do
And
a footnote?
oh yes, Mary Mugford has a footnote here. Go for it.
For those of you that were listening about Benny shivering, he's now
Aw.
fine. Everything's fine. He's got a jacket on and he's all tucked in.
A
on his
blanket
bed.
and a jacket.
He's napping.
And he's napping.
And,
He's very
and a
comfy.
sleeping pad. He's
Yes,
like
it's wonderful. Thanks for listening.
snuggling.
We'll see you next time. And leave some comments, leave some questions. Hope you have a great time. Bye.